For Houston, from Houston, this is the Jimmy Barrett Show on KPRC 950.
All right. Last time we talked to our next guest, we kind of got into the whole shortage of truck drivers thing, and now we're hearing that this summer it could impact gasoline supplies, that there are not enough truck drivers to haul gasoline around the country to go to our service stations. So don't be all that surprised if you show up somewhere and they're out of gas. And I'm thinking, really? Now, I've been around long enough to remember the Arab oil embargo as a kid. I can remember, sitting in line with my dad waiting for a chance to fill up on gasoline, and the price at the time it probably wasn't crazy compared to the price of gas now, but it sure was crazy back then. So are we in for something like that? Joining us is Jim Grundy, trucking industry expert. He's a trucker based out of Texas.
It's a major problem. Oh yeah, it's going to be, and it's not just in crude. Matter of fact, I would say the crude market is substantially in a better position than most other commodity markets or retail markets. You're seeing about a 20% drop in truckers and hauling crude oil and gas, but you're seeing upwards of 40 to 50% running retail product to like Walmart or your HEBs or whatever. There's a major shortage throughout the U.S. right now.
Yikes. And the shortage is not the product, correct? We have plenty of product. The shortage is the ability to get that product to where it has to go.
Yeah, essentially, we haven't raised trucker wages since the mid-'80s, back when the truck driver could go out and support his family. And, the wife and kids could stay at home. And now what's happened over the last 30 years, as we've put so much pressure on lowering prices, maintaining prices, minimizing inflation, the truck driver, the owner-operator out there, the independent, out there trying to provide for his family, is the ones absorbed those price concessions. And it's to the point now where the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And you had in 2020 pandemic where we shut down manufacturing and imports, exports all over the world. Essentially, at the end of every one of those imports, exports, mom and pop shops, there's a trucker delivering that product. And if they had nothing to deliver, they've mothballed their equipment, they've left the industry or retired altogether.
Dang. I used to be a firm believer in capitalism, supply and demand. That was basic economics. You would think if there's a low supply of available truck drivers to haul this stuff around, that would naturally raise their ability to make money.
Well, what's interesting, so I'm going to internalize that statement a little bit with what we're doing here at Sisu Energy up in Fort Worth, and we're a big provider of bulk transportation throughout Southwest U.S., but our guys are making $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a week. We've seen upwards of 80 to 100% rate increases over the last 6 months, where companies are starting to compete for our drivers because there's not enough drivers right now to do fracturing in the oil fields of South and West Texas. So you are seeing supply and demand and capitalism take its grip. But what happens is when you start getting some of these other industries that probably don't have the margins the oil industry has, the end user, the consumers, wind up paying for those increases in supply chain disruptions. And what we're seeing now is nothing to what's about to happen. And what we're expecting, oil to go up over $100 a barrel here by the end of the year. Trucking shortages are going to get exacerbated even more as more companies and these pipelines come online. And they're expecting by 2024, I believe I read, they're expecting short of 100,000 drivers in the United States alone.
Wow. Okay, so here we are. We're in the midst of April. It's almost May. We haven't seen, at least I haven't noticed. I don't think anybody else has really noticed either. Any shortages pop up just yet. I don't know how close we are to running on the margins here, but when do you think we're going to notice this deficit in drivers and supply?
It's happening. It's happening right now, and you really saw it. We're right now, oil. For instance, gasoline's $1 higher today than it was this time a year ago. $1, right? And the thing is we've seen what happens when oil gets above 100 a barrel. But at the end of the day, you're going to have product shortages, and it is happening. It is in certain industries more so than others. But it's the companies, especially your overseas. For instance, I've had a washing machine on back order now for 7 months. We can't get this washing machine from China. It's made in China by a major provider of washing machines because they can't get parts. And why can't they get parts? Because they can't get truckers to bring them the parts. It has nothing to do with their ability to build a washing machine. But we've become such a global economy and so dependent upon other countries and other providers of parts that the infrastructure is just no longer supporting that type of business environment. So I think end users, everybody's they're going to fill it in their pocketbook first, and then they're going to start seeing it on the shelves second.
Okay. Now, another area where there already are acute shortages, and the industry is fighting hand over fist to get their hands on it, and the price is going up seemingly every day, is lumber. What's going on in lumber? Is that also related to trucking?
A big part of it is trucking. Let's just call it supply chain in general. There's so many supply chain issues, and we get a lot of our lumber from Canada, and then you're trying to get you add the amount of building new homes and that we took on last year, early 2020, in the first quarter, and we haven't really caught up. Additionally, now there's a major demand right now for all this infrastructure and folks trying to do these projects in their homes, and the cost of goods and everything else is just going up. And like I said, that's just one minor sector of it that we're seeing on just the building side of the world. But when you start seeing oil prices go up where they are, prices typically follow oil. And oil is going to continue to go up and up and up, and you're hearing federal regulations, and they're going to try to limit fracturing, and all that's going to do is the demand's not going away. You're going to limit supply, and you're going to naturally drive up prices, and that's what's happening not just in oil, but in lumber and steel and everything else.
Yeah, like I don't know if you priced a 2x4 lately, but 2x4 that used to cost just under $3 is now about $10. I mean, it really is.
Have you seen the price of meat over the past 3 months?
Yes, yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Does that hits me where I live?
40%. There you go. You're at 40% increase right now of red meat. You're like, what? Okay, are we at a shortage of cows? No, it's not. It's not a product of supply. It's an issue of getting the product to where they need to go for consumption.
All right, so what we're dealing with here is supply chain issues, and that is what is driving price. Clearly, too, we've lived, Jim, in a pretty inflation-free world here for the last 5 or 6 years, or even longer, as it turns out. That's about ready to change in a big way, don't you think?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And then when you're pumping in $3, $4, $5 trillion into the economy, and which we'll get a little more transparency tonight on some of that. But when you're doing that, there's nothing free. There's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Milton Friedman stated that, and we're all going to see it in prices in one way or the other. And it's going to level itself out. But I think at the end of the day, the end user is going to wind up paying substantially more for the goods that they're used to paying for at a certain price, anywhere from 30 to 50% higher over the next couple of years.
All right. So the answer to prevent that from happening is an answer that would save us from having to pay incredibly higher prices for these things that would cure the shortage?
I think it's a little too late, to be honest with you, for that.
Wow.
I think we mothballed and put out so many companies out of business and trying to bring everything back online, and understanding how we're so dependent on a global economy. You could get into a period of isolationism and say, hey, we're just going to do it ourselves here in North America between Canada and Mexico, and we'll just provide our own goods and services. But that's a very micro view. But from a macro perspective, I think you're years away from seeing the markets level out. I think you're going to see a lot of price gouging over the next few years, and from oil to trinkets to food, whatever else, it's happening, and it's happening right in front of us. There's not a lot we can do. The pandemic is the outlay of what happened there is going to be so substantial, and it's going to be costly, and it's going to take years to figure out how much that's going to cost.
Wow, that ain't a pretty picture. Jim Grundy, appreciate you being honest with us, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Jim Grundy, checking in from Dallas-Fort Worth area here on AM 950 KPRC. That don't sound good. That sounds expensive. things are going to get a little crazy and a little crazy expensive. Hard to get our hands on things. Hard to get our hands on, look at the automotive manufacturers. They can't get the computer chips they need to build cars and trucks. Back with more in a moment. Jimmy Barrett Show, AM 950 KPRC.